Welcome to Putting Together the Pieces Program 4, Rolling a Yahtzee. This program incorporates using an array list of objects, methods, the toString method, and convenience loops. Here is our programming problem. Mini Yahtzee uses an array list of 5 dice, which are die objects. The goal of this is to roll a Yahtzee, which is done by rolling 6s on all 5 dice. This program will run until it successfully rolls Yahtzee, then report when it accomplishes the mission and how many rolls it made before successfully rolling the Yahtzee. When using an array list, we have to remember these 4 items. First, in order to use the array list, we need to import java.util.ArrayList from the Java API. Second, we need to declare the array list with the type of objects using the class name. Third, we need to add the objects to the array list. And fourth, once we've done that, we can use the collection of like objects as a group. You could import the mini-yahtzee.zip from the week 13 timeline. We'll take a look at that program now. Here is our mini Yahtzee program. Notice that this project consists of 2 files, die.java and mini-yahtzee.java. The die class is the one we used to play dice. Let's take a look at the mini Yahtzee program. At the top of the file, we see the import statement for java.util.ArrayList. We must import this in order to be able to declare, define, and use an array list. Scrolling down, inside our public static void main, we see the declaration of an array list of die objects named Yahtzee. Notice the angle brackets with the word die. That is where the class name goes to tell the array list what type of objects we'll be using in our collection. On the right side of the assignment, we see the word new, array list, with die again in the angle brackets, followed by parentheses. This is how we invoke the array list constructor. The next for loop is adding the dice to the Yahtzee collection. We're adding 5 of them, one after the other. Now, because these die objects don't already exist, inside the add parentheses, we see new die. So we're invoking the die constructor and adding 5 new die to our collection named Yahtzee. The explain game method will explain how the game works. Next, we see the for loop. This for loop is a convenience loop, frequently referred to as a for each loop, that declares a die object D that will serve as a placeholder for all of the die objects in the Yahtzee collection, one after the other. So this for loop will print out the 5 initial dice. Now notice inside the print line the use of D instead of D.toString. I'm going to change that and make it D.toString because it's perfectly acceptable to use the D.toString or leave off the toString. Java knows that it should use the toString to represent the die objects. So if we run this, we see the explanation for the code and then those 5 dice objects, which initially have a value of 1. Next, we print a message, press enter to start rolling. Now before we roll the dice, let's take a look at the program. We have 2 counters here. One to hold the value of all the dices totaled up. That's our dice roll total. We'll add up the faces of all the die. If it adds up to 30, then we know we rolled a Yahtzee, because there are 5 dice, and if we have 6 showing on all 5 die, that would add up to 30. So that will be our indicator that we've achieved Yahtzee. The next counter, roll count till Yahtzee, tells us how many rolls it took before we actually rolled a Yahtzee. They're both initialized to 0. This is a convenient loop to use when we know we are going to do the loop body at least one time. Initially, the dice roll total is set to 0. We add 1 to the roll count, and then, using a for loop, we roll all 5 die. We add each one of their face values to the dice roll total. If the dice roll total equals 30, we're done. We've rolled a Yahtzee. But more than likely it won't equal 30 on the first roll. So we repeat the loop by setting the dice roll total back to 0, adding 1 more to our roll count, and rolling the die again, storing the value of all the face values added up in the dice roll total, and checking again. So this loop will continue to run, and we'll count each roll each time we run the loop until we achieve a dice roll total of 30, which is an indication that we've rolled Yahtzee. Once that occurs, we report the outcome and show the array list of dice. Now take a look at that last system out print line for Yahtzee. Yahtzee is the name of our collection, our array list of dice. This is going to invoke the ArrayList's toString method, and that toString method is going to use the toString method we wrote inside die. So in this final printout of the collection of dice, we'll notice that they're enclosed in brackets and each individual die object is separated by a comma. Okay, let's continue running this program. It says press enter to start rolling. I'm going to do that. And we got lucky this time. It says you rolled Yahtzee. Congratulations. It only took you 190 rolls. Here is the array list of dice. Again, notice that the array list of dice starts with a bracket, and after each individual die object there's a comma separating them. And then at the end we see the closing bracket. This is the structure of the toString for an array list. So that output was generated by our last system out print line, Yahtzee. There are 2 helper methods in this program. The explain game method, which provides instructions to the user, and the report outcome method that accepts the integer number of rolls. That's how many times we rolled the dice to achieve our Yahtzee, and that number is reported in the report outcome and how many rolls it took to get a Yahtzee. Okay, so let's recap. The 4 things we need to do when using an array list. Number 1, we need to import java.util.ArrayList in order to be able to use the array list. Number 2, we need to declare an ArrayList object and initialize it using its constructor. To do that, we need to identify the type of objects we'll be using, and we put that class name inside the angle brackets. Number 3, we need to add die objects to our collection using the add method. Because these die objects didn't already exist, we're invoking the die constructor to create new ones that are then added to Yahtzee. Then we get to use our collection. I'm using a for each loop here. For each die named D as a placeholder in the Yahtzee collection, we are printing them out one after the other. This time I'm going to remove the toString just to demonstrate that Java understands if we just want to print an object that it should use the toString method. I'm going to scroll down a little bit. And here again we're using a for loop to roll the dice, collect their face values, and add that to our dice roll total. And then finally, this program, once it does achieve its goal of rolling a Yahtzee, will report the outcome to the user and print out that final version of the Yahtzee dice with system.out.println Yahtzee. Let's run it again. Here's the start of the program that tells us what the program will do and the initial 5 dice. I'm going to hit enter to roll the dice, and this time it took 6,848 rolls to achieve the Yahtzee. PTP Program04 RollingYahtzee reviewed using array lists of objects, methods, the toString method, and some convenience loops. Happy Java coding!